Muted.
All right, welcome this morning to all of you. I appreciate you participating at an 8 a.m. webinar. I don't know what I was thinking. There's not enough coffee to make this super energizing. The topic of this webinar is supporting late or later filers of the college application financial aid applications and off-track seniors in their post-secondary planning process. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the agenda for today. We are going to talk about who we are. We'll define what we mean when we say on track. We will give you some ideas on how you can assess your senior class. And then we'll review some ideas for some support strategies and some additional resources. So one aspect of this webinar that's a little unique is that we have two representatives, one from College Bound and one from the 12th Year Campaign. I myself am Beth Kelly, and I represent Washington State Gear Up. And together we are the College Access and Support Division at the Washington Student Achievement Council. Just a little overview of Washington State Gear Up. It's our third grant, and we're in our final year, and we serve about 8,000 students annually in 7th through 12th grade. We work to build and support students' aspirations for college and increase high school graduation and post-secondary enrollment rates. And then we also have a component of trying to increase families' knowledge and engagement in the whole process as well. And I will let my co-presenters also introduce themselves.
So my name is Christina Winstead, and I work with the 12th Year Campaign. And the 12th Year Campaign, it combines the College Go Washington campaign as well as the College Application campaign. I know that a lot of you guys are sites. We have over 122 sites in Washington State that are running activities to help their students, specifically focused on seniors in the two critical pieces, applying for financial aid and applying for college. And I also work with the FAFSA initiative portal. So the completion portal, somebody will have access to, and we'll talk more about that. And then I'll pass it on to.
Good morning. My name is Yokiko. I am a program associate with the College Bound Scholarship. So just a general overview, it was established in 2007 by the legislature to ensure that all students have access and the opportunity to reach their potential. So this is an early commitment of funds. So students will apply for the College Bound Scholarship in 7th or 8th grade. It works in combination with other types of state financial aid to cover the average cost of tuition at comparable public college rates, some book fees, and some fees and a small book allowance. And we have 66 institutions that students can use the scholarship at. So I sort of elaborated a little bit on the College Bound Scholarship, but I just want to reiterate that it is a two-step process. So if you have a College Bound student, hopefully if you're in the high school, they've already signed up in their middle school year. So students must first sign up in 7th or 8th grade. They have to meet income verification for us. If they're a foster youth student, they're automatically enrolled, so there's really nothing else that they need to do. For foster youth, this could be at any point in time from 7th grade up to age 21 if they do not have a high school diploma. So after students sign up in middle school, there is the College Bound Scholarship Pledge. So they're pledging that the student will graduate from Washington State High School or homeschool with a 2.0 GPA or higher, be a good member of their community, have no felonies, and then they have to make sure that they're income eligible so that way we know that they're still eligible for the scholarship. So they do that by applying for the FAFSA or the WASFA. And then the last step is that when they are going through the college application process, they meet that income verification through the FAFSA. They have to be accepted and then enroll into one of the 66 eligible colleges that are out there. And then just know that it works together with other types of financial aid.
Where can they find a list of the 66 colleges?
So if a student is interested and wants to see which type of schools are available, we have a list for everyone to see all of the 66 institutions. So those range from 2-year, 4-year apprenticeships. So you can find that on the Ready Set Grad website. And then I just wanted to highlight a little bit about understanding the scholarship. We really like to think of it as a commitment. So College Bound isn't necessarily a set amount of dollars that each student will get. So I have this chart here just to give you an idea that when students are using or have the College Bound scholarship, it looks different at every institution because every student's income is different. So what you'll see here is that on the left-hand side, we're going to show that it's comparable tuition rates, and then it's based on the different types of institution that a student may go to. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see private 2-year. So this could be maybe if they wanted to go to the Art Institute of Seattle, or if they wanted to go into another private 2-year apprenticeship program. You'll see that we have the research institution, so that means it's someplace like University of Washington, Washington State University, comprehensive, which would be something like Eastern, Evergreen Central. And then there are private 4-years like Pacific Lutheran University, St. Martin's. But what we want to show in this little graphic here is that the College Bound scholarship in combination with other forms of financial aid is meant to cover the costs for a student. So you'll see that the blue indicates that it's only state need grant or other different types of state financial aid that students can access. And then the College Bound scholarship is in orange, which means that when the student goes to college, their financial needs are essentially met for them to attend the institution. So sometimes you'll see a student with $300 of College Bound scholarship, sometimes you'll see more, but there's no specific number. There's no magic number that a student's going to see if they have the College Bound scholarship. So I just want to make sure that's very clear. And then lastly, when a student is in College Bound processing, or they have this scholarship and they're at the colleges, they just need to make sure that they are income eligible every single year. So just like you would tell any other student who wants to go to school, you want to make sure that they apply for the FAFSA or apply the FAFSA or WASPA every single year. And so some students who have the College Bound scholarship will have eligibility 1 year, but maybe not the next year because things change in their income. So they just need to make sure to do that FAFSA every single year. They need to maintain good academic standing. That's different at every institution, but they want to make sure that they're in good academic standing. And then students have up to 5 years to use the scholarship. So if they decide to take a gap year, they can still use it. Their eligibility will still be there. They'll still have that 4 years worth if they need a longer path. So just making sure that they only use 12 quarters or 8 semesters of the College Bound scholarship.
What happens if a student falls out of good academic standing, you know, and satisfactory academic progress?
So that's where, much like what would happen with a student who maybe doesn't receive the College Bound scholarship, but they have state need grant. So if they fall out of, if they're not in good academic standing, then the same procedure would follow.
Okay. All right. We are going to talk about different post-secondary options. And obviously, when we think about different post-secondary paths, there are multiple ones that a student can choose from. And they include 2-year, 4-year apprenticeship. Some of your students might search for work, join the military, or take some time off to do volunteer work or go on a mission. But for the purposes of this webinar, we are really going to focus on the 2-year college and 4-year college paths. And we are going to talk about what it means to be on track.
So on track, how we're defining it in this webinar is an on-track student is going to meet the requirements and the timeline for their selected post-secondary pathway. So it's going to be that they've come up with their pathway, that they meet those requirements, but also that important piece that we're really focusing on, which is that timeline, because some of those deadlines are really fast approaching. So we want to make sure that for 4-year college readiness, which is a big one, that they are picking the appropriate high school classes in course selection, and this also includes if they're in Running Start, that they're thinking about in their course selection, not only does it meet a high school graduation requirement, but is this going to meet admission standards for my 4-year schools, or for some of those Running Start students, is this going to meet the requirements for my major at my university? And then we also want to make sure that appropriate tests have been completed or scheduled. So they want to make sure that with your students, you know, do they need to take the SAT, the ACT for the 4-year school? We want to make sure they're taking the correct exam and that they're taking it in a timely fashion. Some schools will have cutoffs of when they'll accept test scores, so you want to make sure you're checking with those institutions to ensure that they've completed it in the appropriate amount of time. Of course, every single student is going to apply for the FAFSA or WAFSA. I mean, that's what we're really hoping for is every single one of them. And that's, of course, that they've applied for admissions. That includes finishing their statements and making sure that the application is completed and submitted, and that they have their waivers in if they're receiving a fee waiver, and if they don't have a waiver process in place yet, that they're connecting with that college to see what their waiver process is. And then for some schools, they're going to require a CSS profile, which is an additional financial profile in addition to their FAFSA or their WAFSA.
And then for 2-year, it would be similar as well, but they would take the AccuPlace or a different college placement.
Yeah, for the 2-year colleges, they're going to either bring in their FAFSA scores or they're going to take a placement test at the college. They want to check with the college to make sure they're taking the appropriate placement exam, and it's going to usually test them on reading, writing, and math. It's an assessment. They can't pass it. They can't fail it. It's going to determine what level they're at for their courses so that they're in the correct level of courses in reading, writing, and math. They also will want to be mindful about registration. Registration will happen typically at the community colleges in spring, so somewhere in the April-May timeline. And so students want to make sure that since that happens before they leave the high school, they want to make sure that they are picking those classes out and registering them for them in a timely manner, because classes do fill up sometimes at the schools. And so you want to make sure they're getting that selection of courses that's the best fit for them, but also they'll have to determine what time's the best time for them, things like that.
So we're going to talk just a little bit about the minimum college admission standards. So these are standards that the council sets for 4-year public institutions. So the standard is this: different schools may have different admission requirements beyond this, so they might want that extra year of math or that extra year of language or something in there. But this is the standards that the council has set up, and so we put it up in a really quick and easy way. You see the 4 English credits, 3 math and social sciences, 2 science and world languages, and then an art credit. One point to keep in mind is that there is a 2.0 GPA minimum. And then when students are applying for admission, they want to make sure to send their test scores, the SAT or ACT, directly to the institutions that they are applying to.
So deadlines. The fall 2017 admission deadlines are fast approaching, and we do have one school that has their deadline has already passed. So University of Washington has already, their deadline has already passed for admissions for fall. So if you have students that is their school that they would like to attend, there's some game plans you can come up with. Sometimes they can apply at I've had students that have applied at like a branch campus and then transferred to the main campus where the deadlines aren't as strict. I've had students that started at the community college and worked with the university to make sure that they're accruing credits that will transfer in, but it doesn't mean that they don't have options. We do want to make sure students are mindful of these deadlines, because a lot of the rest of the deadlines are coming up pretty quickly here, and so it's really important to encourage the students, maybe this holiday break is when they're going to get those applications in, that they're going to try to get them done by the end of the year. But this list will tell you all of the 4-year universities in Washington State, their public and private, their deadlines. You can see their SAT, ACT codes, and then their financial aid priority deadlines. So those deadlines, as you can see, are fast approaching. And we'll have some strategies, but you want to make sure the students are aware that that these deadlines are set. So if they turn in their application after the deadline, especially their financial aid priority deadline, it can put them at a huge disadvantage.
Why is that?
For the deadlines?
For the financial aid deadline.
So,
why is that?
Oh, for the priority deadlines for financial aid, that's when they're going to start awarding out those funds. So if you don't meet that priority deadline, you're not going to get in that pool of funding. And that can be a real disappointment for students, but it also can be a huge barrier. So we want to make sure that they're meeting those deadlines to ensure that they're going to get the largest pool of money they qualify for.
Where can we find this document?
So this document here will have a resource section in the back that we have the links to it. And so this one is, I believe, right from the Wisher Handbook. Oh, this is from the Wisher Handbook. So if you went to the Wisher, the Washington Council for High School College Relations, if you went to their tour in the fall, it's in that handy-dandy book that they gave out to everybody, but it's also on their website. And I believe the whole workbook, the whole book is on the website now. So that whole book, if you didn't get one of those books, you couldn't go to Worcester, and I know they're like gold, you can actually get them right online now. So of course, just like the four-year colleges, the community and technical colleges are also going to have some deadlines. And so they're going to have the same type of, they're going to have an admissions process, they're going to have deadlines for financial aid, and they're going to have some admissions for deadlines specifically within special programs. So if you have a student that wants to go into nursing, firefighting, dental assisting, some of those other programs that have special admissions, there are going to be some pretty strict deadlines on those, and they want to start that process early. If your student hasn't, if they're still kind of on the fence about what program they're going into, I encourage them to explore now, because if they do want to go into one of those high demand fields, there's a lot of prereqs and work they need to do beforehand, but they do have some specific deadlines for them.
And the community college have rolling admissions?
So yeah, so the community colleges, they're awesome because they have rolling admissions and they have open door admissions, which means anyone who applies is admitted to that school. So you have time to apply. If a student, you know, if a student doesn't get into their, if they're applying to a four-year college and they've come up with a two-year plan, there's plenty of time for them to apply. I encourage, though, just from my past life working in community colleges, that they apply for admissions so that before like March-ish, so that they can get the notifications about selection of classes and resources on campus, so that they can register for classes in a timely manner. So the 12th year campaign, we have a lot of resources to help you with your students navigating this process. We have a workbook online that walks you through the admissions and financial aid processes, how to get your FSA ID, how to apply for FAFSA or WAFSA. And I know that a lot of you guys are sites that have already held events, but as we talk about some of the options, we also are supporting additional events for the 12th year campaign beyond our October-November deadline. So we have South Seattle Community College. They're going to do a FAFSA and free tax filing event on January 19th. So they're doing something beyond the event dates of October, November. So we encourage you to kind of assess when you're looking at this to see if a 12th year campaign event might help you meet those FAFSA goals that you have or those admissions goals that you have at your high school.
Even if you've already held one?
Even if you've already held one, and so let's say, oh no, I'm out of postcards, I already held that event. I'll send you another batch of postcards. No problem. We just want to make sure that if you are going to have those events, that you have the support that you need.
Could they still request workbooks?
Yes, so we do have workbooks. We have about 1,000 left. So if you didn't get workbooks, so we've given about 9,000 out already, which is awesome. They're in the hands of students. But if you did not request workbooks, if you're a Rainier site, which means you're running a college application campaign event and a College Bowl Washington, so a FAFSA and WAFSA event, and you're doing both of those, then you can qualify for getting the workbooks. If you're a Cascade or Chinook site, you can download the workbooks digitally and email it out to your students. And that way they can also work on them at home, because the parents, I've noticed with parents that they wanted to look through the workbooks so that they understand the process as well.
So this is just a quick reminder when you're working with seniors how you can kind of ask yourself some questions, and there's some guiding questions that you can use when you're working with students. So it's when you're working with a student who maybe is kind of on the fence or you're not quite sure what their plan is, this is a quick and easy way for you to think, have you met with your counselor yet? So if you're not a counselor, this is a great way for you to sort of establish or reestablish that relationship. Do they have an established method? So do you have something in place to track your students? Did you hold a college application event? Have you already held something on your campus about financial aid? Do you use the FAFSA portal to track your students' financial aid completion? Have you done a credit check to see who is maybe falling a little bit behind? And then if you haven't done something, could you benefit from creating a student tracker or caseload system? So these are just ideas that if you're working with students, kind of set a frame up for students to be more successful and to catch them along the way.
Another thing to think about is to make sure that if you're working outside of the high school counseling office, that you're coordinating your efforts with that counseling office so that you guys can do like a collective impact to make sure that everyone is on the same page of your plan of how you're going to address these students so that it's a collective effort.
Yeah, you will need to be strategic, and if you're working in a large school, you might have to divvy up this by caseload. But yes, please work with your school counselors on this issue.
So the FAFSA completion portal. I love this tool. This is a wonderful resource to help you identify students that are struggling with the FAFSA. So this is only FAFSA information, not WAFSA. This is only going to show you information on your senior class. If you don't have access to the FAFSA portal, you have to be a school district employee in order to access that, and your district has to assign a data sharing agreement. We have 93% of those data sharing agreements back in Washington State, so a lot of the districts already have this. If you don't have access to the portal, you can contact us right through the portal here. This shows the aggregate data that everyone has access to, so you can actually search your school, your district, and Washington State to see aggregate information about FAFSA completion. It'll tell you how many students have completed the FAFSA and how many students have errors and how many haven't completed the FAFSA. So it'll give you a baseline information. To get student-specific information, there's a button right at the bottom that you just click and says, I want access to the portal. It lets us know. You just enter your name, your email, your school that you need access to, and your phone number. And then what we do is we contact your district data receiver to ensure that they have approved your account. And then once you're approved, you're able to see your senior class from your high school only. None of the other schools, just your high school. You can see if they have completed the FAFSA by student, if they've completed with errors, or if they haven't completed at all. And this way, and you can run some really easy reports to identify those who are struggling. So maybe you have you notice you have a large number of students that have completed the FAFSA with errors. Maybe that's a great time to invite them to a night where you try to clean up those errors, where you have a FAFSA night specifically for, or a FAFSA event specifically for those who completed their FAFSA but completed with errors. Maybe you go into the portal and you're like, no, I know more students have completed the FAFSA than this. We did it together. One of the things that we see commonly happen is that the students will complete the 16-17 FAFSA as opposed to the 17-18. We want to make sure that the FAFSA they complete is in line with their post-secondary plan. And so if they are starting college in fall of 2017, they will need to do the 17-18 FAFSA. And so that's a pretty easy one, pretty common mistake. Students can check their confirmation email. It'll tell them they'll tell them which FAFSA year they completed, and it's pretty easy to go back in and complete the 17-18 if they've done the 16-17.
When a student fills out the FAFSA, are they notified that it has errors, or is that something that only the portal user would be aware of?
The students should be aware that they have errors. Okay. So typically it's going to be missing signature. So if they sent in a signature page because they didn't do the digital signature, maybe a parent didn't want to get an FSA ID or couldn't, then that's going to take a little longer to process. So you want to kind of be mindful of that when you're looking at it. Some of those may be taking longer to process, and it's just that they're waiting for that supporting documentation to arrive and be processed.
But no one has to update their tax information this year, right? Because
nope. That's the best part about this this new early FAFSA is they do it once and they're done. So once they turn it in with that 2015 tax information, there's no updating. Now, some of our FAFSA events are going to help students with filing their 2016 taxes, and that'll be good for the following year. But this year they just needed their 2015 taxes. Okay. So if anyone has questions on the FAFSA completion portal, this is Christina, my contact information will be at the end. Please feel free to contact me.
All right, this is Beth. I just wanted to throw out a resource that you might be interested in using, and feel free to use it or adapt it however you want. This example of a student tracker is from Chicago Gear Up. And we have an example of what it looks like on the next page. I know this is crazy to look at because it's like small, hard to read. But the reason I put that up there is I wanted to show that there are multiple tabs at the bottom. So there's multiple spreadsheets. You can't actually click on that because it's not Excel, but yes. So what this is you would like put in your student roster, and then identify the different steps that the students have taken in the process. And you can put different notes, different dates and things like that. And the tab that has decision and award letters is a useful tab because it also puts in things like sent in, deposit, and things that items that are part of the process that start to go awry when students start to maybe not follow through. And so this resource might help with some summer melt issues because you could identify some areas where the student needs support. So if they aren't sure about the deposit and whatnot, then you can provide support so they just don't, you know, bail on their plans because of a roadblock. So that's just an example of a type of tracker. And again, if you do use this, feel free to modify it however you would like. One thing I would want to point out on the FAFSA tab, I would recommend that you do not track WASPA at all on here. Like, we don't really want written records of that for student privacy sake. So just a little side note.
So when we're talking about working with these students or these later filers, we've got some categories that we want you to kind of think about when you're working with students. So there's some where it's like they need just some basic assistance. So you may have a student that's doing really well but just hadn't gotten through the application process, so they're now just discovering, now I want to apply, but they have all of the materials that they could possibly need. So they have a preferred idea of what they'd like to do. They just need someone to kind of help them figure out where the websites are, maybe just make sure when they're going through the application process that all of the little ducks are in a row. They may need just a little bit of assistance when they're doing the FAFSA or the WASPA, maybe just figuring out where the website is or just some go-to points, but they're not necessarily in need of a lot of hand-holding. They really just need that general, nice, gentle guidance and push into that getting their plan completed. The next is for a student who maybe has no plan. So they are saying, oh, I wanted to get through high school and I never really thought about that next step. So these students, you want to sort of go back and think about bigger picture. What are you interested in? Let's explore different career options for you or different post-high school options for you. And then be mindful, because they're coming into the game just a little bit later, to reinforce deadlines. So if you know that they are considering going to a four-year school, really sort of pushing that those application and priority deadlines are coming up pretty quickly, especially as we go into the holiday season. So when we get into the beginning of January and February, that's when things are going to start moving a lot quicker. And then now there are a lot of schools that are going to be hosting things like a campus visit day. They could come in for an open house. That are still available for students if they're interested. So that's something where they could benefit from actually seeing what students are doing, seeing what a campus looks like, getting the feel for it. Some students may need help with their fee waiver option, so maybe that's application fee waiver. It could go through if they have the SAT or ACT waiver. These students may also need a lot more help or assistance going through the FAFSA or WASPA because they're just introduced to it a little bit more recently. Then we have students who are credit deficient. So if this is a student who maybe for whatever reason is behind in a couple of different classes, you want to really start having that idea of saying, okay, this is where you are, let's do a status check, and then let's think about how we can get you to that next step a little bit more systemically. And then also keeping in mind when you're creating that plan to be mindful of the dates upcoming. So maybe the student needs to stick around for another semester or another year, so then being mindful and putting those dates in plan, because usually colleges will stick to very similar deadlines so long as there's not a huge change. And with the FAFSA and WASPA deadline updating, I can't imagine any big changes coming up in this next year. But then helping students decide on when that next step should begin. So if that means they need to take a gap year or if they want to go straight in right after they finish their high school plan.
One thing to add is with the fee waivers, there are some other little fees that students might have to pay along the way. Always encourage your students to ask if they have received a waiver before, to ask if it's a financial hardship, to ask if there's a waiver for it. Specifically, community college placement tests. I know they can range between $15 and $40, and that can be a lot of money for a student. If they can ask, if it's a financial hardship, they usually have a process to waive those fees. I've seen students wait to take their placement test because they couldn't afford it, to the point where they miss their registration time and date. And so we just want to make sure that those students have the same opportunity as everyone else.
Are you ever able to defer that cost and have it go against your financial aid package when you actually start?
It's up to the individual institution. So some schools may have that option where they were able to put it towards the account and have it as a deficient amount, and then the financial aid board will pay for it, but other schools will not do that, and they show it as a good faith that they're able to pay.
So it's really, though, it's worth asking.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
You always want to have your students ask. I mean, and it's something that they can do via email, they can go in and ask in person, whatever they feel most comfortable with, but always have them ask. If they don't, the school's going to assume that they can just pay it, and so they want to make sure they advocate for themselves in that process.
Well, now we come to some examples of students where they may be off track or they may just be a late filer. And one example that we're not necessarily advocating for, but it is a realistic possibility, is a gap year. So gap year students, they may take the year off and plan to go in 1 year for various reasons. They may decide to volunteer or do work or just live life, travel around the world. They need a break, but they still need a plan. And so what would be helpful if you have a student who is saying that they're going to take a year off, what would be helpful, what we would suggest, is that you work with them to develop a plan for when they come back and want to enroll. Can you help them find a contact at the post-secondary institution where they want to apply in a year, so they know who to contact down the road? Can you offer them assistance at your college application campaign or College Goal Washington events in the year later, the following year? There are different things that you can do to still assist them to make sure that they end up following through in their post-secondary admissions. And we also have fifth-year seniors, some fifth-year seniors or super seniors. So when should they fill out the FAFSA? What would you suggest?
So if they're a fifth-year senior, you kind of want to project their graduation date because they might be in between 2 FAFSA years, and so they might be completing 2 FAFSAs. So if they're going to graduate at any point in time the following year, like 17, 18, they're still going to want to complete that 17, 18 FAFSA application because they might be attending in spring. The other thing to be thoughtful about is if you're a senior, you know that they let's say that they've done Running Start, but they're going to be a fifth-year senior. There might be some options for them to do some credit retrieval at the college through Running Start. So making sure that if that's the case, that they meet all the enrollment requirements.
And with fifth-year seniors, they would still be eligible to access the College Bound Scholarship?
Yep, so long as they don't have their high school diploma. I mean, their eligibilities, if they're a college-bound student, no matter when they graduate, we just want to make sure that they enroll within 1 year after they complete their high school diploma.
So how do you think that would affect the gap year type of student?
The college-bound scholarship? So if a student graduates, they still have, we give them that 5 year. That's why we sort of given that 5 years worth of time in which the student can utilize the 12 quarters or 4 semesters. So it's just something to keep in mind that students will have to enroll within that 1 year. So they can take time off and then go travel, do whatever it is, volunteer, but then they want to make sure that they're still applying and going through that admission process because it's 1 year after they complete their high school diploma. So you want to make sure that if they're trying to access the college-bound scholarship, that they bear that in mind.
And some schools will allow them to apply now and defer enrollment for a year.
Yeah, so especially for gap year students, that's something to keep in mind. I used to work in admissions, and every institution is a little bit different. So a student could apply for admission, something comes up, and they decide that they want to take a year off, or they have a family circumstance that requires them to be away and they can't start right in the fall. So that's where a student should definitely be in contact with the admissions office and say, do you have deferred admissions, which would just then take their application and move it 1 year later. At the institution that I worked at, that application would stay valid for up to 1 year, but if it went beyond that, they just have to reapply. So we would never just revoke admission, and if a student had applied and they'd been admitted previously, it would be hard-pressed for that student to not be admitted the second time. So just keep that in mind, and every institution is very different, so just make sure that students are asking. It never hurts to ask. There's no harm in asking what they're going to offer.
Another thing to be thoughtful about is for transfer students. So if you know a student's going to attend a community college and then transfer to a university and that's their intended pathway, you want to make sure they identify that at the college early on so they can meet with a transfer advisor. Because not only will they be gaining credits towards their bachelor's degree, but they're going to be preparing for their major, so they want to make sure they're in contact with the four-year college that they want to attend, as well as identifying early on at the community college that they want to be a transfer student. And even if they can identify which college they want to go to, they'll be able to connect them to resources and campus visits by those admissions officers to keep them on track. You also want to make sure with those students, like I said before, that they're taking their placement test or that they bring in sort of supplemental documentation for testing early on in the process. If you have a fifth-year senior that wants to attend the community college, you also want to make sure they can apply at some of the schools pretty early. So it might even be an opportunity if you know that they're not going to graduate until winter of next year. They might be able to apply for the spring quarter early on before they leave your high school so that they have that plan set and ready to go.
Well, the other thing is transfer allows for students to have a plan B. If students were late to the game or didn't have a plan or were not eligible to meet the minimum college admission requirements, going to a two-year first and then transferring is a great option, but it might need to be explained to students.
Yes, and so it's, I know that was the pathway I took because I completed my associates at the community college and then transferred to Evergreen. And so part of it is understanding what the process for transfer is going to be, making sure students know that there are specific classes they have to take in order to graduate. So there's still, even though they think associate's degree is, I'm just going to take some classes, it really is a full degree that they need to meet some requirements on. And so they want to make sure that they have all those ducks in a row, that they have a good thought-out plan. It's not something that happens without some planning. So they want to plan it early on.
Yeah. Next we have a suggested resource. I'm sure most of you are aware of Career Guidance Washington. It's OSPI's advisory curriculum for 6th through 12th grade. And there's a couple of lessons in the 12th grade series that I would like to just point out. You can access this on your own. But these two particular lessons include some suggested activities you could do with students as a group or one-on-one. But they also have some handouts that you could pull out just on your own that could be used with students and families. And one is a post-secondary timeline worksheet, and the other is a credit check worksheet. And it's really helpful because you can have students put out their plan and kind of assess where they're at. And so I would encourage you to take a look at those two lessons in particular and look at the worksheets. So that's a really great resource to have because they should have been doing a lot of this planning in their high school and beyond plan. And so now it's kind of time to assess what has really happened.
So we have lots of resources through the 12th year campaign. If you haven't signed up as a site, you can still sign up for this current year, and we're happy to provide that support. We have our College Bowl Washington resources as well as college application campaign. If you are interested, we have the FAFSA line-by-line training. It's 90 minutes of just rip-roaring FAFSA awesomeness. You will learn everything you ever want to know and probably not want to know about both those applications. But it's great because it'll help you as your students go through it to see kind of where the errors and pitfalls are.
Is that training something that you could share with students or parents if they were going to try to attempt this on their own, or is that really more for staff?
So it's meant for training volunteers, but I have had a couple students watch it. And so it really is for volunteers, but anyone can watch it. It's available to anybody. It might be a little dry for some audiences, but it's great if you have like a FAFSA night, you're getting volunteers together. It's great to help people understand the process. And I have had some students who decided that they wanted to watch it, and more power to them. Yeah. Maybe they'll volunteer at our next 12th year event.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to touch base on, and those materials we talked about earlier, that's just some samples that we had, but you can still order those materials. But I wanted to touch on a couple common FAFSA mistakes. And so some mistakes can be making sure that the information they use, okay, this is a big one, that what they're using for their information is what is listed on their Social Security card. For the FAFSA specifically, when they're making their FSA ID, they need to use their Social Security number. I was at an event and I heard some students whispering, just make it up. That's all I heard, and all I heard, make it up. This is not the time where you make stuff up. And so I go over to the row and ask them, what are we making up over here, you guys? And they were making up their Social Security numbers because they didn't want to call their parents to ask for them, and they were embarrassed that they were in high school and didn't know their Social. Please don't do that. Oh my goodness, I have to go buy an extra box of hair dye now because they gave me some gray hairs there. So they have to be using the actual Social Security number that is theirs, because if they don't, they have to call in and have it unattached from that FSA ID, and it's a big it's a big process where you have to call in, on an actual phone, students.
But if they didn't have a Social Security number?
If they don't have a Social Security number, they more likely will qualify for the FAFSA. And so if a student's unsure whether they should be doing the FAFSA or FAFSA, if they go to ReadySetGrad/FAFSA, there's an assessment that will tell them which one they should be doing. It's asks them 5 easy questions, and it's no problem. And then it'll direct them to the right application. We want to make sure that they are doing one or the other, not one and the other. You can't double down on financial aid. There can be only one application per student. Income, so making sure the easiest way to do that is to use the data retrieval tool, to have the parents make an FSA ID and then import all that data, those numbers, from the IRS. It makes it much more accurate, and it also reduces your chances of being picked for verification because we receive that information from the government. That they're using the right tax year, that the marital status is correct for the year when they're doing the application, their household size, so it can't be oh, it's me, my brother, my sister, my mom, dad, and we have 3 cats, I'm counting them too because they eat a lot. Nope, doesn't work that way. Make sure that they're using the actual guidelines for household size. And then picking the correct FAFSA year for the application they want to do. And that is same with FAFSA. And a lot of these are the same mistakes that happen on the FAFSA as well.
And now we have some resources. I guess that font is pretty small, so my apologies.
Get out your glasses.
We can send this out as well so you can have access to these links. So the first one is the student tracker template that I shared with you. And then the next 2 are those financial aid. Oh, I'm sorry. The next one is check out a college website from...
From State Board of Community and Technical Colleges. They have a wonderful tool to help students determine what campuses have which programs and also to explore programs. So that way, as they're looking at their options, they're really focusing on the ones that have the programs that they want to go into. And it usually has some outcome data on there too about the graduation rates, things like that. So, and labor market data links.
And then the next 2 are those links to the financial aid deadlines for the 4-year and 2-year. And then the following link is for the handbook itself. And again, that handbook is very useful. I would encourage you to download the PDF. Then we have the career guidance, Washington resources, and our Gear Up website, and our College Bound website, and Ready Set Grad. So we'll send that out. And then we just wanted to also share with you that we will have more webinars in the future that feature the College Access and Support Team here at the Washington Student Achievement Council. And the next webinar is going to focus on scholarships, the washboard, and the College Bound Scholarship Repledge. So I hope that you will join us for those webinars, and of course we will record those and make those available online for those who cannot participate live. And then here is our contact information if you have additional questions.
And with that, we asked, do you have questions? So thank you so much for attending the webinar. If you have questions, please contact us with that contact information there, and we'll be sending them more information out later.